You! Yes, you, standing right over there. Are you a calico cat, Therian? And have you always wanted a calico cat mask, but never knew quite how to make one? Well, not to fret, my fluffy feline friend. I'm here to help. Now we have to get our materials. A cat mask. Some scissors. Lots of felt. Eye mesh. You can find this on Amazon. Hot glue sticks. Some acrylic paint. Wait, I think we're missing some. Oh yeah, there they are.
Some paintbrushes to paint with. A silly little hot glue gun. Some lovely foam clay. You can find this on Amazon for real cheap. An airbrush. This is optional. You can just paint it if you like. If you do use the airbrush, you're going to need some water to water down the paint and clean your airbrush, alongside some cups to mix your paint. And of course, what mask would be complete without fur fabric? You could also use acrylic yarn brushed out if you like. Alright guys, let's get going. The first step to making the mask is sculpting the base. This is actually entirely optional and you don't have to do it, but it makes it look a whole lot better, so we're going to do it. The first thing we're going to do is grab a big hunk of foam clay and start sculpting a new snout. Make sure to smooth out the sides of the clay so it doesn't stick out too much. This will also make it easier when you go to felt it. Also, don't worry about getting every single bump and wrinkle out. When foam clay dries, it tends to smooth out on its own. Alright, we've extended the snout. Now we gotta add some more depth to it and make it look more cat-like. Take 2 balls of clay and put them on each side and round them out. This is going to be the snout. It's very important to try and make it look as symmetrical as possible, because once it dries, it's dried. Now we're going to shrink the eyes. This will make them look more realistic. Take 2 balls of clay and put them on each side of the eye, making sure to press on the back side to make sure it doesn't go all the way through. But be careful not to make the eyes too small, or else you risk the chance of not being able to see out of your mask properly. Make sure when you're shrinking the eyes that they're still bigger than they need to be, because once you add the felt, they'll get a little smaller. Make sure you do this on both sides of each eye to make it look as realistic as possible. Next, we're going to make more pronounced eyebrows. Take 2 medium-sized balls of clay and smear them around the eyes. There's no real right or wrong way to do this part, you just have to go with what you think looks best. But do try not to make the eyebrows too big, because once again we are adding felt on top of it, which will make everything slightly bigger. Next we're going to roll out some long pieces of clay to make the ears. Take your piece of clay and put it over and around the ear. Shape and sculpt it until you get something similar to this. Once you have it as you like, go ahead and do the other side and try to make it as symmetrical as possible. At the end, you should have something similar to this. Let dry for 24 to 48 hours. Okay, technically this is a different mask than the one I just made, but the other one is still drying, so we're just going to use this one that's already dry. The next step is to felt and line the mask and add the fur. I will briefly cover that here, but if you want a more in-depth tutorial, please refer to the videos linked in the description for both of those things. So we're going to line the inside of the mask first, and we're going to start by putting hot glue around the nose area. Then we're going to press in our felt, trying to keep it as smooth as possible. Once you've lined the nose, go ahead and move on to the cheeks. Pulling and stretching the fabric is key to getting it smooth, as you can see me doing here. Now we're going to go ahead and do the other side. Same deal, just do the exact same thing on the other side. Okay, now we're going to start gluing the nose bridge down. Put this little triangle shape with hot glue, and then just glue the fabric right down. Now we have the forehead to do. Don't do the ears yet though, just do the forehead. Okay, now it's time to move on to the ears. We're going to split it into 2 segments though, so draw a line down the middle and separate the parts. And once again, we do the exact same thing on the other side. When you're done, it should look just like this. The next step is to cut out the eyes and also cut out the excess lining. Starting at the mouth, we're going to cut off the excess felt. You do not need to leave any behind for the lining because it's just going to get covered up anyway. Alright, and once you have that, you can set that felt aside for later, where you can use it as scrap fabric for the airbrush, and we're just going to cut out the eyes. Once again, we do not need to leave any behind, we're just going to straight up cut the eyes out. Look at that, we're ready to felt the front. Starting at the nose, we're going to go ahead and put some hot glue down and glue down the fabric. Then we're going to glue down the sides of the mouth. Now let's move on to the cheeks. Then we once again glue down the forehead and over the eyes. And last but not least, we glue down the ears. Then we're going to cut off the excess, but this time we are going to leave about 1 inch to 1/2 inch of fabric. Once we have that, we can start pushing over and gluing down the excess felt. There we go. Now we have a little Slender Man looking cat. Now we're going to go ahead and poke a hole and cut 4 triangles and glue down the eyes. Yay! Look at what we got. Now we can move on to the fur. Once again, there will be a tutorial linked in the description for this too. Alright, felting and furring is done. Now we move on to the fun part, adding the nose and airbrushing. To add a nose, just cut out a piece of felt. It can be a triangle, you can cut little nostrils in it if you want, but it's really up to you. Once you have your nose, we're going to glue it right onto the face. Alright, for this next part, you probably should have a little mannequin head to put your cat on. It'll make it a lot easier. We're going to just use this orange paint to start out. We're using an airbrush for this tutorial, but if you don't have an airbrush, that's fine. Just everywhere I airbrush, you just paint on directly. We're going to start out by putting this orange paint into the cup, and then we're just going to add a tiniest little bit of water. It is very important when you're just starting to mix the water in with the paint that you only use the tiniest little bit of water at first. If you add all the water you need in at once, the paint won't properly mix with the water and you'll have clumps and your airbrush will clog. So the reason why we do this is if you add just a tiny bit first, it'll get mixed all together and it will only be a little soupy, but then it'll make it a lot easier to add more water to it, and thus making it less clumpy and less likely to clog. Once you've successfully mixed in your first batch of water, you can go ahead and add the rest. But be careful, if you add too much water to your paint, it'll become too diluted, and it'll bleed through to the paper mask, which is not a good idea because then your mask is completely ruined. A good way to tell if you've added enough water is if it looks like about the consistency of milk, where it's all liquidy and not clumpy and sloshy, but it's not super runny, it's not like water. So you want it to be a little thick, but not too thick. Once you've mixed your paint with your water, you're going to go ahead and pour it into the airbrush. Ideally, before you pour it in, you should have already checked and cleaned your airbrush and make sure it's not clogged like I did. But once again, if you're not using an airbrush, that's okay, just follow along with normal paint. Alright, to start out, we're just adding a little bit of orange to our mask. We're just going to do it in little splotches. Just add little dots. And yes, you can use the airbrush on the fur fabric. You just have to brush it out later, and it'll be still nice and soft. I typically don't draw out a design for my Calico Cat masks at first. I just randomly add little splotches and dots. I think it looks really cute when you add a lot of orange, because if you don't add enough orange and black, it'll be too white, and it won't really look like a Calico Cat very much. I like to add a lot around the eyes, around the ears, that kind of thing makes it look real cute. Once you're satisfied with the amount of orange you've added, we're going to go ahead and switch to our color to pink, and we're going to start doing the inside of the ears. This part's fairly easy and straightforward, and while we're at it, we're also going to go ahead and do the nose. Alright, we're going to go ahead and switch our color to black now. So the reason we go ahead and save black for last is because we're going to overlap it on the orange to make it look nice and cute. You can't overlap the orange really onto the black if you're doing an airbrush. That's why we saved it for last. Because orange is a much lighter color, and if you tried to do it, it wouldn't show up. Again, we're pretty much just randomly spraying and doing little dots. I actually connect these two dots together to make it a bigger shape. And while we're at it, we're also going to line the eyes and give them a little eyeliner. And also give our mask a nice cute little smile. I go under the mouth and add that as well as add little nose dots. Once you're satisfied with the current pattern, you're going to go ahead and remove it from your demonic mannequin, and we're going to briefly brush out the fur. We just do this right away so once the paint dries, it's not all clumpy and hard. Also, it makes it look nice and fluffy. Once we have done that, we're going to go ahead and add our eyes. Go ahead and flip over your mask and grab your eye mesh. We don't need a whole lot. And you're going to go ahead and cut off the corners to make it rounded so it doesn't poke your face. We're going to go ahead and draw a little circle with hot glue around the eye. And once we've done that to both eyes, we're just going to go ahead and slap that eye mesh right on there. Once we've done that, we're going to grab our paint for our eyes. Any color will do, but today I'm going to be using blue. We're just going to take our paintbrush and directly paint on the blue. Don't worry right now about the eyes being see-through, we'll fix that later. Just go ahead and paint it all on. Once you finish painting your eyes, we're going to go ahead and take the mask off. I don't show it directly on camera, but I'm blowing with my breath on the eyes to push the paint to the back of the mask. Then we're going to take a scrap piece of felt and just wipe the back. This will ensure that the paint does not dry over the holes and you can see through the mask eyes very well. Once you've done that, you can go ahead and add your pupils. I'm using black paint for that. And then once you're done with that, you can just go ahead and do the same thing over again, blow on the mask, and wipe the back. And once you've done that, your cat mask is done! Hope it turned out good for you guys. I think mine did pretty well. Thank you so much for watching. Please like and subscribe, and I'll see you next time.